So first of all, we would like to wish a happy Mother's Day to mothers everywhere, wherever they may be. We wish them a happy Mother's Day to all the mothers listening, and certainly to all of the mothers of everyone who is listening. We wish a happy Mother's Day. And we want to acknowledge certainly that there is something so special about this concept of our relationship in the form of motherhood. And I understand that, that all of us may not have had the relationship with our mothers that we wished we had had. Some may be adopted, some may not have known their mother, some may have had less than an ideal experience. So sometimes it's hard when we start talking about motherhood and a mother's love. It's hard for people because it brings up unpleasant memories. And if that's the case, we're truly, truly sorry for the sadness, and do not want to stir that pot. What I would suggest is that whatever it is that we think that ideal relationship of motherhood could mean to us, that relationship, that unconditional love, that presence of God that I was talking about in the opening treatment, that exists for us now and today. Perhaps not in the form of that particular relationship or that particular person, but that experience that we are seeking, that experience that relationship symbolizes for us exists. Okay, so we can have it today. So concentrate, if you will, or think of, if you will, what the qualities of that relationship mean. And recognize that as close as our relationship to our mothers was, physically you can't get any closer to another human being. Not only did our little bodies grow perfectly inside of hers, but we were connected. We were connected through the umbilical cord. We shared the very same lifeblood. We shared the very same food. We shared the very same oxygen. Our little bodies, didn't even breathe for itself. While our lungs were moving the fluid in and out so that they could develop the strength that they would need when our bodies were presented to the air, our mother's body was breathing for us. So that physical relationship that we have or had with our mothers is without a doubt the closest kind of physical relationship that we can ever have with another human being. And this is why, it has come to symbolize the greatest love, if you will, or a very sacred place in societies of what this relationship of motherhood means. And what we want to recognize is that relationship is a symbol, is a form of expression of the unconditional love of God for us. That all of what is contained in this idea of motherhood, the perfect way that nature had provided for our little bodies to grow, for our lungs to develop, for us to obtain our food and nourishment through the umbilical cord, that as perfect as nature, as God's activity of nature has set that up to unfold perfectly, that it is a divine action, it is a divine activity. It is, in fact, the love of God expressing itself in perfect order and in perfect right action. We can see that. We understand that at some level, emotional level, we understand that. We understand that what this relationship represents to us is the love of God. In some cultures, some ancient cultures in ancient Egypt, they had religions that worshipped the cow as a sacred animal, kind of different than what we might think of in the Hindu terms. They had temples that were built, and they were built in the image of a cow. and people would enter into this temple that looked like a cow, and that's where they would worship. And to our Western mind, we think, my God, that's so strange, worshiping a cow. What kind of a strange cult might this be? But if we step back and think about what the cow symbolized to these people, what it represented, that's what they were worshiping with, or that's what they were trying to commune with. And the cow is a perfect example of God's loving relationship. Miraculously, it takes grass in at one end and it gives milk out the other. And that milk sustains not only the cow's children, the calves, but it sustains human children as well. So through this miracle, if you will, of the cow, this ordinary grass turns into the very substance of life. And this ordinary grass, inside the cow's womb, this ordinary grass serves to nourish and to grow another expression of life, this tiny little calf that will be born. So if we stop and think about what the cow represented to the people of the time and the place and that culture, it's truly a symbol of God's caring for us and God's love for us. So what we want to remember is that our human relationships are expressions of God's love. And God's love is an unconditional love. It is not a judging love. It is not a conditional thing. It is not a human experience of love where we might say, well, I'll love you if you do this for me. And, it's kind of a transactional love. But it's agape love. It is truly unconditional. It is love in the purest sense because it is an experience of oneness. And the best definition that I have ever heard of love is that love is the experience of unity, the experience of oneness. So that which we feel one with, and when we feel one with it, that is our experience of the presence of the divine. And we understand how that love manifests itself in this idea of motherhood that we have, but we must also recognize that it manifests itself in other relationships that we have as well. We recognize that what this symbolizes for us, this idea of motherhood, is that as our soul, if you will, was coming into our little bodies, whenever that occurred as we were growing, that as our souls came into our bodies, that the love of God had already prepared for us everything that was required. Everything that was required. The air that we would need to breathe was already here. The water that we would need to drink was already here. The wisdom within our mother's bodies that knows how to care for its child was already there. The people who would take us at the moment of our birth and wrap us in warm clothing and clean our little bodies and care for us, the loving arms that nurtured us as we were born were already here. And we want to understand that process did not stop the moment that we were born. That the God that oversaw the division of the cells and some becoming eyes and ears and bones, that the intelligence that set up a complete and perfect process to welcome us into this world did not abandon us when we were born. But rather it continues on so that when we go through this life, we are provided with all that we need, all that is appropriate for our growth. And that when we leave this world, that wherever we go, that the way has already been prepared for us. That there are warm and loving beings ready to greet us, to welcome us, to help prepare us, to get us accustomed to our new world, just as there were people, sentient beings, waiting for us here. So where we're going with this is, as I mentioned last week, our dear friend Mike was gravely ill, and he made his transition this week. He passed on. In accordance with his wishes, there were no heroic actions taken to sustain his body here, but rather he went peacefully and naturally on to the next experience. And we wish him well, and we wish his family our greatest love, our greatest sympathy. And Mike requested that there be no memorial service. He did not want to have a memorial service. So the scattering of the ashes, the interment, that will be a private ceremony. And well, we can't have a memorial service for him. I felt inspired to talk about what he meant, or what he represented or symbolized to me and to many of the folks that knew him. And that was friendship. When I think of his life as I knew him, he was the absolute epitome of friendship. And Emerson said, you know, if you want to be a friend or have a friend, you must be a friend. That there's an affinity that we attract into our lives, those persons who are perfect for the growth of our soul through this relationship of friendship, through this relationship where we can experience the presence of God in the presence and in the company of another human being who loves us unconditionally. See, we come into this world, we incarnate and we come into this world, and we're cloaked in a body, and we're surrounded by people who are doing the very best that they can to teach us what they know. But unfortunately, what in most cases people are teaching us is they are teaching us the ways of the world and not necessarily the ways of the soul. Excuse me. They are teaching us the things that we need to be, quote, successful in this life. So almost from the moment that we're born, we start to get these ideas heaped upon us, so to speak. We start to absorb an identity and a culture. Now keep in mind that the identity and the culture that we absorb are just simply ideas. They're just simply ideas that are being taught to us at a very young age. So very early on, we find out whether we are male or whether we are female. And very early on, we find out what the expectations in our family and in our culture are based on our gender. We are taught things about what men or women in our family are supposed to do and not supposed to do, and in our culture, what we're supposed to do and not supposed to do. We may be given ideas about religion, that our religion is the right religion and other people are just mistaken and are practicing the wrong religion. And we might feel relieved that, oh, well, aren't we lucky that we happen to be the right ones and everybody else happens to be wrong. And we go through life kind of accumulating this I call it junk, this mind babble. We accumulate all of these ideas about who and what we are. And it's all just ideas. Had we been born in another place at another time in a different body, in a different culture, we would absorb totally different ideas. George Bernard Shaw said that patriotism is the silly idea that my country is the best one by virtue of the fact that I was born there. And it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but that's about as much thought as most of us give to the ideas that we're being taught when we grow up. Osho wrote something that I thought was very interesting. He said, we grow up and we have electric lights, and we know how electric lights work in as far as if we turn the switch, they come on, and if we turn the switch, they go off. And if they don't go on, something's wrong. We change the bulb or we check the circuit breaker. And that's probably the extent that most people, most people's knowledge of electricity goes. In other words, just because we know how to throw the light switch doesn't mean that we know anything at all about how the nuclear power plant works, or the steam power plant, or the hydro power plant. We couldn't go into one of those facilities and do anything, anything worthwhile. Perhaps I could sweep the floor, but when it got more technical than that, I would be putting us all in danger. So the point is that being able to use the light, being able to throw the switch, does not make us knowledgeable about electricity. We can cooperate with it, we can work with it, but we don't really know about it. And what Osho is saying is we become so familiar, so we take it for granted that, we just turn on the light and the lights come on, that we never really stop and question ourselves, well, how does that work? And what is electricity, and where does electricity come from? And what is this nuclear power plant that's down on the river all about, and how does it work? And where does its fuel come from, and where does its fuel go? And, is it dangerous? Is it harmful to the environment? All those questions, we kind of never get to ask or answer them. But we know if we throw the switch, the light comes on. And what Osho is telling us is that we go through life in many cases exactly the same way. We get up in the morning and we go about our daily routine. We have our breakfast, we drive to work, we do our chores, we carry out our activities, we go grocery shopping, we come back home, we do what we need to do, we watch a little bit of TV, we go back to bed, and the next day we repeat the process all over again. And he said, that's like throwing the light switch. It doesn't mean that we know anything at all about what life is, or where life comes from, or where life goes, or even who we are. We go through life kind of encased in this shell of ideas that other people have given to us about who and what we are and what is expected of us. And we try to live up to that facade. We try to live up to that expectation and that image. And we never really start to get to the key question of who am I? The idea of who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Am I really all of these things that I was taught? Are all of the things that I was taught true? Is our way of believing whatever our way happens to be the right way and everybody else's way the wrong way? Are there other ways? And all of those kind of deep questions. So what happens to us is we tend to go through life when we're living at that level. We tend to go through life and we are living almost a lie. We are living something that is not authentic, let me put it that way. So we are living up to the roles that we have been assigned in life or that we have accepted in life. But even though the world might perceive us or our culture might tell us that people in our tradition are brave, we may not feel brave, but we have to pretend to be brave. Or our culture may tell us that people in our gender and people in our role are very, very good in a certain area, mathematics or engineering or medicine, and we may not feel very, very good or very competent or very smart, but we have to act as if, because that is what is expected of us. So we're going through life and we've got this situation where the only person we can really be truthful with is our own self when we're alone. And I think perhaps that's why in our society many people don't like to be alone. They shun it. They'll keep the TV or the radio going until the very moment they fall asleep. What's the worst punishment in our society is capital punishment. What's the second worst punishment? It's solitary confinement. People are terrified of being alone. So we're going through this life as spiritual seekers. We're going through this life and we are trying to sort it all out. We're trying to figure out, well, who am I really? Why am I here? Where am I going? What is this all about? And this is where a friend, and this is where the relationship of friendship becomes so important in our spiritual growth. You can almost think of friendship as a spiritual practice. In order to have a friend, we must be a friend. And what is it that friendship means to us? What is it that friendship entails? And certainly, if you want, you can go read Emerson's essay on friendship. The language is a little dated. It's about 200 years old, so it's not the easiest read, but we just feel a kinship with our friend. We just feel a oneness with our friend. I think perhaps the best way I can put it is we feel a total acceptance with our friend. Now, keep in mind there are true friendships and there are kind of fake friendships, just like in loving relationships. When I talked about love in February, we talked about like the monarchies in Europe. They married off their children to the children of other monarchies because it helped to cement their wealth and their peace and gave those ruling families more control. It was about power and control and not about love. And the same thing comes with friendship. Sometimes there are friendships that are not true friendships, but are friendships of convenience or friendships of commerce, as Osho would call it, transactional friendships. I'll be your friend because you're politically connected and you can help me get a job. I'll be your friend because of what I can get from you, and those kind of things. And those are not friendships at all. Those are kind of acquaintances, if you will. I'm talking about a friend and a friendship with someone who just accepts you as you are. Someone with whom you can be your authentic self. If you are frightened, you can say you're frightened. If you feel less than adequate in a particular task, you can share that with that person. And they won't judge you. They won't criticize you. They won't condemn you. They'll offer encouragement. They'll try to help you to move forward. And it is in this relationship of friendship when we have a true friend, when we have someone who is there for us, who wants nothing more from us than to be with us. Right? No agendas. Just want to be with you. Just want to talk with you. I just want to share things with you. When we have that kind of a relationship, what starts to happen is in that other person we see reflected back the very love and the very presence of God. Here in our relationship with another human being, we can start to experience that with which we are one. That which has created us out of ourselves, out of itself, that which only wants to be with us, is not judging us, is not condemning us, is not criticizing us, is not complaining about us, but is always for us, is always in our corner rooting for us. That's, I think, one of the great ahas on the spiritual path is that all of God is for us and none of God is against us. And why is it so that all of God would be for us and none of God is against us? Because God created us out of itself. How could it be against itself? And while we might understand that intellectually, we might kind of get the concept of that. It is in the experience of true friendship that we come to realize it, that we come to feel it, that we know that it is true. So what Emerson tells us is a couple things about friendship. First is that real friendship is based on truth. There's no need to lie to your friend. There's no need to pretend to your friend, nor for your friend to lie or to pretend back to you. They can accept you as you are. You can accept them as they are, and you can talk about things honestly, as you perceive them and as they perceive them. And it is in that open and honest exploration of ideas, that we truly get down to the deeper levels of experience. If you've ever read any of Rumi's writings where he talks about his friend and his teacher Shams, he talks about that relationship in the deepest terms. In the Western world, people have come forward and said, "Oh, they must have been lovers." But in the world in which Rumi was living, the lover was the spiritual love. It was the love of God. It was the love of truth. And what I love about you is I love the truth, and I love the presence of God, and I love that you are a spiritual seeker too. And that is the kind of deep and meaningful friendship that they had. So the type of friend that we wish to have is the type of friend that we wish to be, and that is someone who truly cares about other people, simply because of their innate presence, that they are expressions of God, that they are the very presence of the divine right here, right now. And I don't need any other reason to love them. I don't need any other reason to desire to be their friends. I don't need any other reason to care about somebody other than that God made them the same as God made me. So in this experience of friendship, we start to recognize the divinity in others. So much so that Emerson said we tend to make our friends out to be bigger and better and stronger than they really are, because we overlook any faults that they might have. We minimize the faults, we maximize the virtues, and they do the same with us. But it is in this ability to be with another human being, to share ideas with another human being, and to start to see within them the magnificence of God, the presence of God within them, that we truly start to see the presence of God and the magnificence of God in all persons and in our own selves. If you want to have a friend, you must be a friend. So what happens is there is this mutual awakening, if you will. There is this mutual deepening of our spiritual awareness that comes about through a true friendship. And the other thing that Emerson tells us about friendship is that it is something that is not intellectual. It is beyond words. It is something of the heart, and it is something of the emotions. And when we are engaged in a deep friendship, when we are communicating with our friends, there's a feeling of oneness that goes with that. There's a feeling of mutual caring that goes with that, of mutual respect that goes with that. And we can learn from that relationship then that it is okay to feel, that it is at the level of feeling nature that we truly connect with God. You'll hear me say this over and over again. We use our intellect as we grow spiritually. We use our intellect to help us to evolve past the point where we are driven by our emotions. But then as we are using the intellect, we come to a point of realization that we know that the that the intellect is not all that there is, that the heart is beyond that, that the experience of the presence of God is beyond that. So we move through the emotions of fear and doubt and anger and all of those things to the intellect, which kind of helps us to control them, and then we surrender to the emotions of the heart, to the emotions of love, to the emotions of the experience of the presence. So when we are a friend and when we have a friend, we get to experience the love at the pure level of love, not the intellectual love, not the transactional love, but the I love you simply because I love you. Because we are both expressions of the divine, And when I look at you, I see that which is good. And I know that when you look back at me, you see the same. So this idea of friendship as a spiritual practice comes in kind of into a greater light when we recognize the truth of what Emerson said, which is, in order to have a friend, we must be a friend. So if we wish to have someone in our life who accepts us the way we are, we must accept others the way that they are. If we wish to have someone in our life who is non-judgmental, then we must be non-judgmental. If we wish to have someone in our life who is who's in our corner rooting for us, whatever it is that we're doing, then we must be the same for others. And we start to truly understand then that what you give out is what you get back, that life is a game of boomerangs, right? That when you cast your bread upon the waters, they shall return. Your word does not come back to you void. Or as Jesus said, it's done unto us according to our belief. So in developing, in establishing, and in experiencing true friendships, what we are doing is we are deepening our awareness of the love and the presence of God. And in this manner, then, friendship becomes our spiritual practice. So I mentioned this today, I talk about these ideas today because to me that's what Mike represented, the epitome of friendship. He was always there, always willing to help, walked into any situation and instead of asking what he was there to get was asking what he was there to give. Didn't seem to have an agenda other than wanting to be with people, wanting to know about them sincerely, wanting to understand what it was that inspired them, as well as what it was that might hold them back, so he could encourage them. And as we look back, on our time where he was with us here, and I believe he's with us wherever he is, and always shall be, I think we can be grateful, or at least I can be grateful, for the perfect example, the clear example of friendship that he displayed for me in my life and for those of us who knew him. So I invite you then, as you go forward this week and really forever, for the rest of your life, forever, to contemplate your friendships, to cultivate your friendships, to ask yourself if you are being the kind of a friend that you want to have. To think of yourself in terms of being someone worthy of the love of friendship, of being the beautiful expression of God that you are, and being perfectly ready, willing, able to recognize that in another. See, the world is going to heap upon us its ideas of who we are and what we should be and how we should act. But it is our friends who are going to help us to peel those layers of ignorance away, to help us to get down to the authentic self, to help us to find that kernel of truth and of beauty that is in each and every one of us. And that is a great gift that we can give, and a great gift that we can receive, and a great gift that Mike shared with us while he was here. So let's go forward then and be the friend that we always wished that we had. And so it is.